Picture this. You are sitting at your desk on a Monday morning, coffee still warm in your hand, and you open your phone. A single notification, a comment, a message, maybe a text from someone you barely talk to anymore. And just like that, your entire mood shifts. That warm, calm feeling you woke up with disappears in seconds. Your jaw tightens. Your chest feels heavier. You start replaying the words in your head, crafting the perfect comeback, imagining how the conversation might unfold. 10 minutes pass, then 30. Before you know it, an hour of your morning has been consumed by someone who probably already forgot what they said to you. Sound familiar? Here is the thing most people never stop to consider. That reaction you just had, that rush of frustration, that wave of defensiveness, it was not free. It cost you something. It cost you time. It cost you focus. It cost you peace. And the person who triggered it, they paid absolutely nothing. This is the trap that millions of people fall into every single day. They hand over the remote control of their emotions to strangers, to co-workers, to people on the internet who do not even know their last name. And then they wonder why they feel so drained, so distracted, so far away from the life they actually want to build. But what if there was a different way? What if the most powerful thing you could do in the face of negativity was not to fight back, not to explain yourself, not to defend your honor in some dramatic showdown, but simply to do nothing? What if the strongest move available to you was to ignore it entirely? That idea might sound passive. It might even sound weak. But by the end of this video, you are going to understand why ignoring is one of the most disciplined, most strategic, and most liberating skills a human being can develop. You will learn why silence is not surrender, why walking away is not losing, and why the people who master the art of ignoring are often the ones who end up with the clearest minds, the strongest focus, and the deepest sense of inner peace. We are about to explore 9 powerful principles that will completely change the way you respond to the world around you. And I promise you, if you truly absorb what you are about to hear, you will never look at conflict, criticism, or negativity the same way again. So stay with me. This one is going to change something inside you. Chapter 1. Why your reactions are costing you more than you realize. Let me ask you something honest. How many hours of your life have you spent arguing with people who are never going to change their mind? How many evenings have you lost replaying a conversation that happened at 2 in the afternoon? How many mornings have you started with a knot in your stomach because of something someone said the day before? If you are being truthful with yourself, the answer is probably more than you would like to admit. And that is not a criticism. It is simply the reality of being human. We are wired to respond. When someone pushes, something inside us wants to push back. When someone throws words at us, our instinct is to catch them and throw them right back. It feels natural. It feels necessary. It feels like the only option. But here is what nobody tells you. Every single time you react emotionally to someone else's negativity, you are making an invisible transaction. You are trading your peace for their chaos. You are exchanging your focus for their drama. You are giving away something priceless, your emotional stability, in return for something worthless, a moment of temporary conflict that will mean nothing in a week. Think about it like this. Imagine you are carrying a glass of water through a crowded room. That water represents your energy, your calm, your focus for the day. Every time someone bumps into you and you react, you spill a little. Someone makes a rude comment, splash. Some of your water is gone. Someone questions your decisions, splash. A little more disappears. Someone posts something online that irritates you, splash. Another portion lost. By the end of the day, you are holding an almost empty glass, wondering why you feel so exhausted, so scattered, so emotionally hollow. Now imagine a different version of you walking through that same room. People still bump into you. People still say things. But this version of you has learned something crucial. Not every bump deserves a reaction. Not every push requires a push back. This version of you holds the glass steady, keeps walking, and arrives at the end of the day with most of that water still intact. That is not weakness. That is mastery. The people who provoke you, and I want you to really hear this, most of them are not looking for a conversation. They are not interested in understanding your perspective. They are not trying to reach a resolution. What they want is your reaction. That is the currency they are after. When you fire back with anger, when your voice rises, when your fingers start typing a furious response, you are handing them exactly what they came for. Your frustration becomes their trophy. Your attention becomes their validation. And the worst part is, the moment you react, you have already lost the exchange, because now the situation is living inside your head, taking up space, burning through energy that could have gone toward something that actually matters. But here is the beautiful part. You get to choose. You always get to choose. Nobody can force you to react. Nobody can reach inside your chest and flip a switch that makes you angry. Yes, they can say provocative things. Yes, they can push buttons. But the decision to engage, to argue, to defend, to escalate, that decision is always yours. And when you start treating that decision with the seriousness it deserves, everything in your life begins to shift. Think about the people you admire most, the ones who seem unshakable, the ones who walk through chaos with a steady expression and a calm voice. Do you think they do not hear the criticism? Do you think they do not notice the negativity? Of course they do. The difference is they have trained themselves to evaluate before they react. They ask themselves a simple question that most people never think to ask. Is this worth my energy? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. When you begin operating from this place of awareness, something remarkable happens. Arguments that used to consume your entire afternoon suddenly lose their grip. Comments that used to echo in your mind for days start fading within minutes. People who used to have the power to ruin your mood gradually become background noise, not because you stopped caring about life, but because you started caring about your peace more than you cared about being right. Chapter 3. The quiet power of saying nothing. There is a moment that almost every person has experienced at least once. You are standing in front of someone who just said something hurtful. Maybe it was a coworker who questioned your competence in front of others. Maybe it was a family member who made a cutting remark at the dinner table. Maybe it was a friend who said something so unexpected that it felt like the ground shifted beneath your feet. And in that moment, everything inside you catches fire. Your heart beats faster. Your mind starts racing, scrambling through 1,000 possible responses, searching for the one perfect sentence that will put this person in their place. Your body tenses. Your hands might even tremble slightly. Every fiber of your being is screaming at you to say something, anything, to defend yourself, to strike back, to prove that you are not someone who can be spoken to that way. Now here is the question I want you to sit with. What would happen if, in that exact moment, you said absolutely nothing? Not because you could not think of a response, not because you were afraid, but because you chose silence deliberately, consciously, with full awareness of what you were doing. Most people never consider this option. Silence, in our culture, is often treated like surrender. We are taught that if you do not respond, you lose. If you do not clap back, you are weak. If you do not have the last word, the other person wins. Social media has amplified this belief to an almost unbearable degree. Everywhere you look, people are rewarded for sharp comebacks, savage replies, and perfectly timed verbal takedowns. The loudest voice gets the most applause. But let me offer you a different perspective, one that might feel counterintuitive at first, but I believe will resonate deeply once you think about it. Silence is not the absence of strength. Silence is strength in its most concentrated form. Think about a river for a moment. When a river is shallow, it makes a lot of noise. Water crashes over rocks, splashes against the banks, creates turbulence that you can hear from far away. But when a river is deep, truly deep, it moves quietly. There is an enormous amount of power beneath the surface, but the surface itself remains calm, almost still. The depth is what gives it strength, not the noise. People work the same way. The ones who react to everything, who fire back at every insult, who cannot let a single comment pass without a response, they are often the shallow rivers. There is a lot of noise, a lot of splashing, but not much depth beneath the surface. The people who can sit in the middle of chaos and choose silence, those are the deep rivers. Their power is not loud. It does not need to be. It is felt, not heard. I want to tell you about something I once witnessed that has stayed with me ever since. I was at a small gathering, a casual evening among friends and acquaintances. At one point, a conversation turned slightly heated. One person, let us call him Amir, began making pointed comments toward another person at the table. Let us call her Layla. The comments were not overtly aggressive, but they carried a sharp edge. The kind of remarks designed to provoke without being obvious enough to call out directly. Everyone at the table noticed. You could feel the tension thickening like humidity before a storm. People glanced at Layla, waiting for her response. Some even leaned forward slightly, anticipating the clash. And Layla did something extraordinary. She looked at Amir calmly. She did not smile, but she did not frown either. Her expression was neutral, composed, completely unbothered. She held his gaze for about 3 seconds, which does not sound like much, but in a tense moment like that, 3 seconds of calm silence feels like an eternity. Then she simply turned to the person next to her and continued a completely different conversation, as if nothing had happened. The effect was remarkable. Amir's words, which had felt so sharp and loaded just seconds ago, suddenly hung in the air with nowhere to land. They had been launched like arrows, but there was no target, no reaction, no defensiveness, no counterattack, just calm, deliberate silence. And here is the part that I want you to notice. Within minutes, Amir became visibly uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat. He tried to re-enter the conversation but struggled to find his footing. The dynamic at the table had completely changed, not because someone delivered a brilliant comeback, but because someone refused to play the game at all. That is the power of silence. It does not just protect you, it shifts the entire energy of the situation. When you choose not to respond to provocation, something almost paradoxical happens. The person who expected a reaction suddenly becomes the one who feels exposed. Their words, which were designed to pull you down, end up revealing more about them than about you. People around you notice. They see who maintained composure and who lost theirs. And without a single word being spoken, the situation communicates everything that needed to be said. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. That sounds great in theory, but in the moment, it is almost impossible. When emotions are running high, silence feels unnatural, like holding your breath underwater. And you are right. It is not easy, especially not at first. But here is what I want you to understand. Silence is a skill, not a personality trait. It is something you build, not something you are born with. The first time you choose silence in a heated moment, it will feel uncomfortable. Your mind will keep pushing you to speak. Your ego will tell you that staying quiet means admitting defeat. But if you can hold that silence, even for 30 seconds, something shifts inside you. You realize that the world did not collapse. The argument did not escalate. And most importantly, your peace remained intact. The second time is slightly easier. The third time, easier still. And eventually, silence becomes your default response to situations that do not deserve your words. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you have learned that some situations lose their power the moment you stop feeding them with language. There is also something deeply practical about this skill that goes beyond emotional discipline. When you stay silent during a disagreement, you give yourself time to think. Instead of reacting from impulse and saying something you might regret later, you create space for your rational mind to catch up with your emotions. That pause, that gap between the trigger and the response, is where wisdom lives. It is where you get to choose who you want to be in that moment, rather than being swept along by what you are feeling. I have seen people destroy relationships with a single sentence spoken in anger. I have seen careers damaged by one email sent in frustration. I have seen friendships ended by words that were never meant, but could never be taken back. In every single one of those cases, the person later said some version of the same thing. I wish I had just stayed quiet. Silence would have cost them nothing, but speaking cost them everything. So here's what I want you to carry from this chapter. The next time someone says something designed to provoke you, before you open your mouth, ask yourself one question. Will speaking right now protect my peace, or will it disturb it? If speaking will genuinely resolve something important, then speak with clarity and calmness. But if speaking will only pull you deeper into a conflict that does not matter, then let the silence do the talking, because sometimes the loudest message you can send is the sound of absolutely nothing. And in that nothing, there is more power than most people will ever understand. Chapter 4. Guard your mind, like you guard your home. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you own a beautiful home. You have spent years building it. Every room represents something you care about. Your health, your relationships, your goals, your sense of self. The walls are strong. The windows let in warm light. The garden outside is peaceful. It is the kind of place where you can breathe deeply and feel safe. Now imagine that you leave the front door wide open all day, every day. Anyone can walk in. Strangers, neighbors, people you have never met. Some of them track mud across your floors. Some rearrange your furniture without asking. Some sit in your living room and start yelling, filling your peaceful space with noise and chaos. A few even break things on their way out. At the end of the day, you look around at the mess and think, why does my home feel so uncomfortable? Why can I not find peace here anymore? The answer is obvious, right? You left the door open. You let everyone in without any filter, without any boundaries, without any decision about who deserved to enter and who did not. Now, here is the thing. Your mind works exactly the same way. Every single day, your mind is exposed to an enormous amount of information, opinions, conversations, and interactions. Some of these are valuable. They inspire you, educate you, challenge you in healthy ways, and help you grow. But a significant portion of what enters your mind each day is noise. It is negativity that does not belong to you. It is other people's frustrations leaking into your mental space. It is arguments that have nothing to do with your goals. It is criticism from people who do not understand your journey. And if you do not guard the door, all of it gets in. This is something most people never think about consciously, but it is one of the most important concepts you will ever encounter. Your mental energy is finite. It is not unlimited. You do not have an infinite supply of focus, attention, and emotional bandwidth. Every single day, you wake up with a certain amount of mental fuel, and everything you engage with throughout the day either adds to that fuel or drains it. Think about what drains you. That 10-minute argument with a stranger online. It does not end when you close the app. Your mind keeps replaying the conversation for the next hour, sometimes longer. You think about what you should have said. You imagine their response. You feel the frustration building again, even though the original interaction is long over. That is not 10 minutes of energy spent. That is an hour. Sometimes half a day. Sometimes it follows you into the next morning. There is a quote that has stayed with me for years. I do not remember who said it first, but it goes something like this. You will never reach your destination if you stop to throw stones at every dog that barks at you. And the truth in that statement is almost uncomfortable, because most of us have been stopping. Most of us have been picking up stones. Most of us have been wasting precious time on barking that was never going to stop, no matter how many stones we threw. So here is the first lesson, and I want you to carry it with you for the rest of this video and beyond. Your reactions have a price. Every time you respond emotionally to something that does not truly matter, you pay that price in energy, in focus, in peace. The people and situations that trigger you are not charging you directly. You are volunteering to pay. And the moment you stop volunteering, the moment you hold that glass of water steady and keep walking, you begin to reclaim something that most people do not even realize they have lost. Your power, your calm, your direction. That is what choosing not to react gives you. And it is worth more than winning any argument ever could. Chapter 2. The Myth of Needing Everyone's Approval. There is a lie that most of us absorb so early in life that we do not even recognize it as a lie anymore. It sounds something like this. If someone has an opinion about you, you need to address it. If someone misunderstands you, you need to correct them. If someone questions your choices, you need to explain yourself until they agree. We grow up believing that approval is oxygen, that without it we cannot survive. We learn to scan people's faces for signs of acceptance. We adjust our words, our behavior, sometimes even our values, just to make sure the people around us are nodding along. And for a while, this strategy seems to work. People like us. People approve. The anxiety quiets down, at least for a moment, but then something shifts. Maybe you make a decision that goes against what people expected. Maybe you change careers, end a relationship, start a new chapter that nobody around you understands. And suddenly, the approval you depended on starts disappearing. The same people who once nodded are now questioning. The same voices that once supported you are now filled with doubt, criticism, or even judgment. And this is where the trap tightens, because now you feel like you have to explain. You have to justify every move. You sit down with person after person, conversation after conversation, laying out your reasons, your logic, your feelings, hoping that if you just say the right words, they will finally understand. Sometimes they do, but more often they do not. And you are left feeling more exhausted than before, wondering why you even tried. Here is the truth that will set you free if you let it. Not every opinion about you is accurate. Not every criticism deserves a defense. And not every person in your life has earned a right to an explanation. Let me put this into perspective with something you have probably experienced. Imagine you are walking down a busy street in the middle of a city. Let us say Istanbul or Barcelona, somewhere alive and full of movement. Hundreds of people pass you. Each one of them glances at you for half a second and forms some kind of impression. Maybe they notice your clothes, your expression, the way you walk. Maybe they approve. Maybe they do not. But here is the question. Would you stop each one of them and ask what they thought? Would you chase down a stranger to explain why you are wearing that jacket or walking in that direction? Of course not. That would be absurd. But that is essentially what many people do with opinions in their daily life. A coworker raises an eyebrow at their decision, and they spend the next hour building a case for why they were right. A distant relative makes a comment at a family dinner, and they lose sleep constructing the perfect response. Someone on social media, a person they have never met and will probably never meet, posts a critical comment, and suddenly their entire evening is hijacked by the need to defend themselves. The cost of this behavior is enormous, and most people never calculate it. Every minute you spend explaining yourself to someone who is never going to understand is a minute stolen from your goals, your creativity, your growth. Every conversation you have defending a decision you already know is right is a conversation that drains your confidence instead of building it. Because here is the subtle damage that constant explaining does. Each time you feel the need to justify your choices, you are unconsciously telling yourself that your own judgment is not enough. You are saying, in effect, I need this person to approve before I can feel confident about my decision. And that is a dangerous place to live, because there will always be someone who disagrees, always. You could make the most thoughtful, well-researched, carefully considered decision of your life, and someone out there will still shake their head and tell you it was wrong. That is not a flaw in your decision-making. That is simply how human beings work. We all see the world through different lenses, shaped by different experiences, different fears, different desires. Expecting everyone to see your life the way you see it is like expecting every person in a crowded theater to have the same favorite scene. It is never going to happen. The wisest people I have ever observed share one common trait. They are comfortable with being misunderstood, not because they do not care about people, not because they are arrogant or dismissive, but because they have made peace with a fundamental truth. Their path is their own. Their journey will not make sense to everyone, and trying to make it make sense to everyone is the fastest way to lose sight of where they are actually going. Think of your attention like a spotlight on a dark stage. You have a limited amount of light, and wherever you point it, that is where your energy goes. If you point that spotlight at every critic in the audience, you will never see the path beneath your feet. But if you turn that spotlight inward, toward your goals, your values, your next step, the critics do not disappear, but they fade into the darkness where they belong. This does not mean you should become a closed-off person who never listens to anyone. Far from it. Meaningful feedback from people who genuinely care about you is incredibly valuable. A trusted friend who challenges your thinking, a mentor who asks hard questions, a partner who tells you the truth even when it is uncomfortable. These voices matter. They deserve your attention and your honest engagement. But there is a world of difference between someone who speaks to you from a place of love and someone who speaks to you from a place of projection, jealousy, or simply boredom. Learning to tell the difference is one of the most important skills you will ever develop. And once you develop it, you will stop wasting your spotlight on voices that were never trying to help you grow. Here is what I want you to take from this chapter. The need for universal approval is an illusion. It does not exist. It never has. The most fulfilled, most focused, most emotionally grounded people you will ever meet are not the ones who manage to get everyone to agree with them. They are the ones who stopped needing everyone to agree. They found their compass, they trusted their direction, and they kept walking even when the crowd behind them was full of noise. And you know what happened? Eventually, the noise faded, because noise always fades when you stop giving it your attention. So the next time someone questions a choice you have already made with clarity and intention, try something different. Instead of sitting down to build your defense, simply nod. Smile if you feel like it, and keep walking. Your life does not need a jury. It needs a direction. And the moment you stop explaining and start moving, you will feel lighter than you have in years. Or consider the coworker who makes a passive-aggressive comment during a meeting. The comment itself lasts maybe 5 seconds. But how long does it live in your head afterward? You might spend the entire afternoon turning it over, analyzing the tone, wondering what they meant, debating whether you should confront them. 5 seconds of input, 4 hours of mental processing. That is not a fair trade. That is robbery. And the worst part is, nobody forced this on you. You volunteered for it. You took that 5-second comment, opened the front door of your mind, and invited it to sit on your couch and stay as long as it wanted. Now, I am not saying this to make you feel guilty. I am saying it because awareness is the first step toward change. Once you see this pattern clearly, once you really understand how much mental energy you are hemorrhaging each day on things that do not matter, you cannot unsee it. And that awareness becomes the foundation for one of the most transformative habits you can build, the habit of guarding your mind. Guarding your mind means making conscious decisions about what gets your attention and what does not. It means looking at a negative comment and thinking, does this deserve space in my head? It means recognizing when a conversation is heading toward pointless conflict and choosing to step away before it drains you. It means understanding that just because something is happening around you does not mean it needs to happen inside you. This is where the power of ignoring becomes incredibly practical. Ignoring is not about pretending that problems do not exist. It is about being selective. It is about recognizing the difference between something that genuinely needs your attention and something that is simply noise disguised as urgency. Let me give you an example. Imagine two scenarios happening on the same day. In the first scenario, a close friend reaches out and tells you they are going through a difficult time and need someone to talk to. In the second scenario, a stranger on the internet leaves a rude comment on something you posted. Both of these situations are asking for your attention. But are they equal? Absolutely not. The first situation involves someone you care about, someone whose well-being matters to you, someone who is reaching out with genuine need. That deserves your energy. That deserves your focus. That is a meaningful use of your limited mental fuel. The second situation is noise. It is a stranger who does not know you, does not care about you, and will forget about the comment within minutes. Giving that situation your attention is like taking money from your savings account and throwing it out the window. It produces nothing. It builds nothing. It changes nothing, except it leaves you with less energy for the things that actually matter. The problem is that most people treat these two situations with the same level of urgency. They spend just as much time stewing over a stranger's comment as they do supporting a friend in need, sometimes more. And over time, this inability to distinguish between what matters and what does not creates a state of chronic mental exhaustion. You have probably seen this in people around you. Maybe you have felt it yourself. That constant tiredness that is not really physical. You slept enough. You ate well. You did not run a marathon, but you feel drained. Your thoughts are foggy. Your motivation is low. You struggle to focus on things you used to enjoy. In many cases, this is not a medical issue. It is an attention issue. Your mind is tired because you have been spending its energy on things that gave you nothing in return. You have been leaving the door open, and your mental home is full of uninvited guests who have been making noise all day. The solution is not complicated, but it does require practice. Start paying attention to what you pay attention to. That might sound circular, but stay with me. Throughout your day, begin noticing when your mind gets pulled into something unproductive, a negative thought loop, an imagined argument, a replay of a conversation that already happened. When you catch yourself in one of these loops, ask yourself a simple question. Is this making my life better right now? If the answer is no, gently redirect your focus. Do not fight the thought. Do not beat yourself up for having it. Just notice it, acknowledge it, and choose to put your attention somewhere else. It is like noticing that you left a window. open during a storm. You do not need to analyze why the rain is coming in. You just close the window. Over time, this practice changes the landscape of your mind in ways that are hard to describe until you experience them. Thoughts become clearer because they are not competing with a dozen unresolved emotional conflicts. Focus becomes sharper because your attention is not being pulled in 15 different directions at once. And perhaps most importantly, you start having energy left over at the end of the day. Energy for your goals. Energy for the people you love. Energy for the version of yourself you are trying to become. Successful people, and I do not just mean financially successful. I mean people who are genuinely at peace with their lives, almost always share this one trait. They are incredibly protective of their attention. They do not engage with every criticism. They do not entertain every argument. They do not give their mental real estate to people and situations that offer nothing in return. They guard their mind like they guard their home. They choose who gets in. They decide what stays. And everything else, no matter how loudly it knocks, gets left at the door. I want to leave you with this thought before we move forward. You are not obligated to process every piece of negativity that crosses your path. You are not required to have an opinion about every opinion someone else has about you. You are not failing by choosing to ignore something that does not deserve your energy. You are protecting something precious, something that, once depleted, takes real time and effort to restore, something that determines the quality of every single day you live. Your mind is your home. Start treating it like one. Chapter 5. Some people are just fishing for a reaction. I want you to think about something for a moment. Have you ever been in a conversation where, halfway through, you suddenly realized that the other person was not actually interested in what you had to say? They were not trying to understand your point. They were not looking for common ground. They were not even really listening. They were just poking, prodding, pushing your buttons one by one, watching your face carefully, waiting for the moment you would finally snap. If you have experienced this, you already know how disorienting it feels, because at first you take the bait. You engage genuinely. You think this is a real conversation. You explain your perspective, offer your reasoning, maybe even try to be empathetic. But nothing works. Every calm response you give is met with another jab. Every attempt to de-escalate is twisted into another provocation, and slowly the realization dawns on you. This person does not care about the topic. They care about your reaction. That is the entire point. That is the game. And once you see this game for what it is, once you truly recognize it, it changes the way you navigate almost every difficult interaction for the rest of your life. Let me explain what is really happening beneath the surface, because understanding the mechanics of this behavior is the key to freeing yourself from it. Some people carry an enormous amount of unresolved frustration, insecurity, or dissatisfaction inside them. They may not even be fully aware of it, but that inner tension needs an outlet, and provoking others becomes their release valve. When they say something sharp and you react with anger, something inside them settles, not because they solved a problem, not because they learned something, but because for a brief moment they feel powerful. They feel in control. Your reaction becomes evidence that they have influence over someone else's emotional state. And for people who often feel powerless in their own lives, That evidence is intoxicating. This is why logic does not work on them. This is why explaining yourself is pointless. This is why staying calm and rational often only makes them push harder. They are not engaged in an intellectual exchange. They are engaged in an emotional hunt, and you are the prey. Now here is the part that most people miss entirely. The moment you react, the hunt is over, and they have won. But the moment you refuse to react, something fascinating happens. The hunt fails. The trap sits empty, and the person who set it is left standing there holding a fishing rod with no catch, looking far more foolish than you ever would have. I once read about a psychological experiment, and although I cannot recall the exact study, the concept has stuck with me. Researchers observed how children on a playground dealt with teasing. They found that the children who reacted strongly to being teased, crying, yelling, retaliating, were teased far more often and more intensely. But the children who showed little to no reaction were gradually left alone. The teasers lost interest because there was no payoff, no audience reaction, no emotional fireworks. So they moved on to someone who would give them what they wanted. Adults are not so different. The mechanism is the same, just dressed up in more sophisticated language. The colleague who makes snide remarks during meetings. The acquaintance who always manages to slip in a backhanded compliment. The person online who writes something deliberately provocative under your post. They are all doing the same thing those playground bullies were doing. They are casting a line and waiting for a bite. Your job is to stop biting. And I know that sounds simple, but let me be honest with you. It is one of the hardest things a human being can learn to do, because our instinct to defend ourselves is deep. It is primal. When someone attacks, everything inside us mobilizes for a counterattack. Walking away from that energy, choosing not to engage when every nerve in your body is screaming at you to respond, takes an extraordinary amount of discipline. But here is what makes it worth the effort. Every time you successfully refuse to react to a provocation, you get stronger. Not in some abstract motivational poster way. I mean neurologically, psychologically, practically stronger. Your brain begins building new pathways. The gap between stimulus and response grows wider. The trigger that once sent you into an immediate emotional spiral starts producing a different internal experience. Instead of rage, you feel awareness. Instead of defensiveness, you feel clarity. Instead of the desperate need to respond, you feel something that might surprise you. Freedom. Because that is what this is really about. When someone can control your reaction, they have a leash on your emotions. You might not see it, but it is there. They pull, you move. They push, you stumble. They say jump, and even though you hate yourself for it, something inside you starts calculating how high. But the moment you stop reacting, you cut that leash. And suddenly, you realize you were never actually trapped. You just believed you had to respond. Let me share another way to think about this. Imagine you are walking through a night market, somewhere vibrant and noisy, full of vendors calling out to you from every direction. Buy this, try that, come look at this. Now, do you stop at every single stall? Do you engage with every single vendor? Do you feel obligated to explain to each one why you are not interested in what they are selling? Of course not. You walk through. You glance, you decide, you move on. Some stalls catch your interest and you stop. Most do not, and you keep walking without a second thought. Nobody is offended. Nobody chases you down the street demanding an explanation. The interaction simply does not happen because you chose not to participate. Provocative people are like those vendors, except they are not selling anything valuable. They are selling conflict. They are selling drama. They are selling emotional chaos wrapped in a bow made of clever words. And just like in that market, you do not owe them your time, your attention, or your engagement. You can simply keep walking. The more you practice this, the more you will notice something surprising about the people who try to provoke you. When they realize that their tactics do not work on you, one of two things happens. Either they lose interest and move on to someone who will give them the reaction they crave, or, and this is the more interesting outcome, they actually begin to respect you. Because on some level, even they recognize that a person who cannot be easily provoked is a person operating from a position of strength. Your refusal to engage becomes its own message, and that message says more than any comeback ever could. So the next time someone is clearly fishing for a reaction, trying to pull you into an argument you did not ask for, pushing buttons they have no right to touch, remember this: the bait only works if you bite. The trap only closes if you step in. And the game only continues if you agree to play. You do not have to play. Walk through the market. Keep your hands in your pockets and let them shout at the empty space where you used to stand. Chapter 6. Stop explaining your life to people who are not living it. There is a conversation I had years ago that completely changed the way I think about explanation. I was talking to someone I respected deeply, an older man who had built a quiet but remarkable life. He was not famous, not wealthy, in the way the world usually measures it, but he had something that most people spend their entire lives chasing. He was at peace, genuinely, visibly at peace. I asked him what his secret was. He smiled the way people do when the answer is both simple and hard to hear at the same time. Then he said something I have never forgotten. I stopped explaining my garden to people who only came to count the weeds. At the time, I did not fully grasp what he meant. But over the years, those words have proven themselves true again and again in my own life and in the lives of nearly everyone I have observed closely. Here is what he was really saying. Some people will never look at your life and see what you are building. They will only see what they think is missing. They will look at your choices and find the flaws. They will look at your progress and point out the gaps. And no matter how carefully, how patiently, how thoroughly you explain your decisions to these people, they will continue counting weeds, because that is what they came to do. This is one of the most exhausting patterns a person can fall into, this cycle of constant explanation. And what makes it so exhausting is that it never actually ends. You explain one decision, and they question the next. You justify one choice, and they find fault with another. It is like trying to fill a bathtub with no plug. No matter how much water you pour in, it keeps draining. You keep explaining, and they keep questioning, and nothing ever reaches a satisfying conclusion. The root of this problem goes deeper than most people realize. The need to explain yourself to everyone is often tied to a fear that lives quietly in the background of your mind. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of being judged. The fear that if people do not fully understand your reasons, they will think less of you, or worse, that they might be right. But here's the thing about that fear. It is based on a false assumption. The assumption is that other people's understanding of your life determines the validity of your choices. As if your decisions need a stamp of approval from the people around you in order to be real. As if the life you are building needs to pass through a committee before it can count. It does not. Your life is not a thesis defense. You do not need to stand in front of a panel of judges and argue your case until they give you a passing grade. Your choices do not require unanimous consent from your family, your friends, your colleagues, or the strangers on the internet who seem to have opinions about everything. Think about the people throughout history who changed the world. Almost without exception, they made decisions that the people around them did not understand. They left careers that seemed stable. They pursued ideas that seemed foolish. They walked paths that had no visible destination. And in nearly every case, the people around them demanded explanations. Why are you doing this? What are you thinking? Do you realize how crazy this looks? If those individuals had stopped to explain themselves to every skeptic, if they had waited until everyone around them approved, many of the greatest innovations, creations, and transformations in human history would never have happened. They moved forward not because everyone understood, but because they understood. And that was enough. Now, I want to be clear about something important, because this principle can easily be misunderstood. I am not saying you should never communicate with the people in your life. I am not suggesting you become a closed door that nobody can knock on. Communication, real communication, is one of the most beautiful and necessary things in any relationship. When someone you love and trust asks about your decisions from a place of genuine curiosity and care, that conversation is worth having. That is not explanation. That is connection. The problem arises when explanation becomes justification, when you stop sharing and start defending, when every conversation about your choices feels less like an exchange and more like a courtroom cross-examination. That is when you know you have crossed a line, not because you did something wrong, but because you are giving the wrong people too much access to your decision-making process. Let me offer you a practical framework. Think of your life like a house with rooms. Some rooms are public. Anyone can see them. Your job, your social media presence, the surface-level details of your daily life. These rooms have glass walls, and that is fine. But some rooms are private. Your deepest motivations, your personal struggles, your reasons for the choices that shape your future, these rooms have doors. And you get to decide who has the key. Not everyone deserves a key. Not everyone has earned the right to walk through those private rooms and offer their commentary. Some people are just tourists. They pass through, look around, form quick judgments, and move on without ever understanding the full picture. Explaining yourself to tourists is one of the most draining things you can do, because they will never appreciate the depth of what they are seeing. They are just passing through. Save your explanations for the people who have earned them, the ones who have been with you through the difficult chapters, the ones who showed up when things were hard, not just when things were interesting, the ones who listen not to judge, but to understand. Those people deserve your openness. Everyone else gets the hallway and a polite smile, There is another side to this that I think is worth exploring because it affects more people than you might expect. Every time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you do something subtle but significant to your own confidence. You send a message to your subconscious that says, "My decisions are not valid until someone else approves of them." And over time, that message becomes a belief, and that belief becomes a pattern, and that pattern slowly erodes your ability to trust your own judgment. I have watched this happen with incredibly capable, intelligent people. They know what they want. They know why they want it. They have thought it through carefully. But the moment someone raises an eyebrow, all of that certainty collapses. They start second-guessing. They start doubting, not because the eyebrow raiser made a valid point, but because the habit of seeking external validation has become so deeply embedded that they cannot move forward without it. Breaking this habit is not about becoming stubborn or dismissive. It is about building a deeper relationship with your own judgment. It is about learning to sit with a decision and feel confident in it, even when the room is not clapping. That is real independence, not the loud, defiant kind that makes a scene, the quiet kind that simply keeps walking because it knows where it is going. And here is the beautiful result of this shift. When you stop explaining yourself to everyone, your energy changes. You show up differently. There is a calm certainty in the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you make decisions. People feel it. They might not be able to name it, but they feel it. And ironically, the less you explain, the fewer people ask for explanations. Because confidence is its own language, it communicates without words. So I want to leave you with this thought. You do not owe the world a running commentary on every decision you make. You do not need to justify your growth to people who are still standing where you used to be. You do not need to make your journey small enough to fit inside someone else's understanding. Your garden is yours to tend. Some people will come and admire the flowers. Others will come and count the weeds. But at the end of the day, you are the one who knows what you planted and why. And that knowing, quiet and unshakable, is more than enough. Chapter 7. Peace is not found. It is chosen. Let me tell you something that took me a long time to understand. For years, I thought peace was something you arrived at, like a destination on a map. I imagined that if I could just fix enough problems, resolve enough conflicts, get enough people to understand me, then one day I would wake up and everything would feel calm. The noise would stop, the tension would dissolve, and I would finally be at peace. But that day never came, because every time I solved one problem, another one appeared. Every time I resolved one conflict, a new one emerged. Every time I finally got someone to understand me, someone else misunderstood me. The finish line kept moving, and I kept chasing it, getting more tired with each step, wondering why peace always felt like it was just around the next corner, but never actually arrived. And then one day, something clicked. It was not a dramatic revelation. There was no lightning bolt, no profound conversation, no life-changing event. It was just a quiet moment on an ordinary afternoon when a thought entered my mind and settled there like a stone dropping into still water. Peace is not something you find. It is something you choose, and you choose it by deciding what you stop responding to. That thought changed everything for me, because up until that point, I had been operating under the assumption that I needed to respond to everything. Every criticism needed a rebuttal. Every misunderstanding needed a correction. Every disagreement needed a resolution. Every rude comment needed a reply. My mind was like a customer service desk that never closed. Everyone got a response. Every ticket got processed. And the line never got shorter, because the more I responded, the more people showed up with something new for me to deal with. What I did not realize was that I was creating my own chaos. Not intentionally, of course, but every response I gave was an invitation for another exchange. Every defense I mounted was the opening argument for another debate. Every correction I offered was the first move in another chess match that I did not actually need to play. Here is a metaphor that might help you see this more clearly. Imagine you are sitting in a quiet room. It is peaceful, warm light, comfortable chair, just you and your thoughts. Now imagine that on the wall in front of you there is a row of switches. Each switch is connected to a different source of noise. One switch turns on an argument with a coworker. Another turns on a disagreement with a family member. Another turns on a comment from a stranger online. Another turns on a memory of something hurtful someone said 3 years ago. Every time you respond to one of these situations, you flip a switch, and the moment you do, noise floods in. The room is no longer quiet. Your thoughts are no longer clear. The peace you had seconds ago is now buried under layers of sound, emotion, and mental clutter. But here is the crucial thing. Nobody else is flipping those switches. You are. Every single time. The situations exist, the people exist, the comments, the criticisms, the disagreements, they are all out there, waiting on the other side of those switches. But they only enter your mental space when you choose to engage, when you choose to respond, when you decide that this particular piece of noise deserves to fill your quiet room. Peace begins the moment you start leaving those switches alone. Now, I realize this sounds almost too simple, and in a way, it is simple. But simple does not mean easy. The difficulty lies in overcoming the deeply ingrained belief that you must respond to everything. That belief has been reinforced throughout your entire life by parents who taught you to always have an answer, by schools that rewarded quick responses, by a culture that celebrates the sharpest comeback and the fastest reply, by social media platforms literally designed to make you react to everything you see. Breaking free from that conditioning takes time. It takes patience. And most importantly, it takes practice. But let me tell you what happens when you start practicing. At first, it feels strange. Someone says something provocative, and you just let it sit there. Your mind screams at you to respond. Your fingers hover over the keyboard. Your mouth opens and then closes. Everything inside you wants to engage, but you hold steady. You leave the switch alone, and the noise that you were about to invite into your quiet room stays on the other side of the wall, and then something miraculous happens. Nothing, absolutely nothing happens. The world does not end. The person does not win some imaginary contest. Your reputation does not crumble. The argument does not grow. In fact, the opposite occurs. The situation simply fades. Like a fire with no fuel, it burns for a moment and then goes out. That first experience of choosing non-response, of watching a potential conflict dissolve simply because you refuse to participate, is one of the most empowering moments a person can have. Because in that moment, you realize something that changes your relationship with the world forever. Most of the chaos in your life was not happening to you. It was happening because of you, because you kept flipping switches. As you continue practicing, something even deeper begins to shift. Your baseline state starts to change. Instead of walking through each day braced for conflict, anticipating the next argument, mentally preparing defenses for situations that have not even happened yet, you start to relax. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw unclenches. Your thoughts slow down and become clearer. Not because the world around you has changed, but because you have changed the way you interact with it. People often talk about finding inner peace as if it is some mystical achievement reserved for monks on mountaintops. But the truth is far more accessible than that. Inner peace is not about retreating from the world. It is about learning which parts of the world to let in and which parts to leave outside. It is about recognizing that your mental space is sacred, that your emotional energy is precious, and that you have every right to protect both of them from unnecessary intrusion. There is a beautiful simplicity in this approach to life. When something matters, when it is genuinely important, when it involves the people and things you care about, you engage fully. You bring your attention, your compassion, your best thinking. But when something is just noise, when it is provocation dressed as conversation, when it is drama pretending to be urgent, you let it pass. You leave the switch alone, and you let the quiet remain. I have found that the people who live with the deepest sense of peace are not the ones who have eliminated all problems from their lives. That is impossible. Problems are part of being alive. The peaceful ones are the people who have learned to stop multiplying their problems through unnecessary reactions. They face what needs to be faced, and they release what needs to be released. They respond to what matters, and they ignore what does not. That discernment, that ability to tell the difference between a situation that deserves your energy and one that is simply trying to steal it, that is the foundation of peace. And it is available to you right now, today, in this very moment. Not as something you need to earn or achieve, but as something you simply need to choose. So choose it. The next time your day begins to fill with noise, the next time someone tries to pull you into a conflict that serves no purpose, the next time your mind starts replaying an argument that ended hours ago, take a breath. Look at that switch on the wall, and consciously, deliberately, with full awareness of what you are doing, choose to leave it alone. The quiet that follows is not emptiness. It is peace, and it has been waiting for you all along. Chapter 8. Walking away is not weakness. It is wisdom. There is a moment I think about often. It was a warm evening in late spring, and two men were standing outside a small cafe, their voices growing louder by the minute. What had started as a casual disagreement about something small, I never caught the original topic, had quickly escalated into something heated. Fingers were pointing, faces were reddening. A small crowd had formed, the way crowds always do when tension fills the air, and both men seemed locked into a performance they could not exit. Neither one wanted to be the first to walk away, because walking away meant losing. Except one of them did walk away. He paused mid-sentence, took a visible breath, and said something along the lines of, "This is not worth my evening." Then he turned around and walked back into the cafe. No dramatic exit, No final insult over his shoulder, no slamming of doors. He just left. The other man stood there for a moment, mouth still open, arms still raised in a half gesture, and then, without an audience to perform for, without someone to push against, he deflated. The energy left his body like air from a balloon. Within 30 seconds, the crowd dispersed. Within a minute, it was as if nothing had happened. I think about that evening because it illustrates something that most people fundamentally misunderstand. We have been taught almost universally that walking away is the move of the defeated. It is what you do when you cannot handle the heat. It is surrender. It is retreat. It is the white flag. But if you were watching that scene from the outside, as I was, the reality was exactly the opposite. The man who walked away was the one who looked strong. He was the one who appeared to be in control. He was the one who demonstrated that he had the power to decide what deserved his time and what did not. The other man, the one who stayed, the one whose voice was the loudest, he was the one who looked trapped. Trapped by his own ego, trapped by his need to win, trapped by the belief that walking away would make him appear small. This is the great paradox of walking away. It looks like giving up, but it is actually taking control. It looks like losing the battle, but it is actually choosing not to fight one that was never worth fighting in the first place. Let me ask you something personal. How many arguments have you stayed in long past the point where they stopped being productive? How many conversations have you continued not because you were learning anything or resolving anything, but simply because you did not want to be the one who stopped talking first? How many relationships have you maintained not because they added anything to your life, but because leaving felt like failure? If you are honest, the number is probably higher than you would like. And every single one of those situations cost you something. Time, obviously. Energy, certainly. But also something less tangible and more precious. They cost you pieces of your peace, slivers of your calm, fragments of focus that could have been directed toward something meaningful. Here is what I have come to believe after years of watching people navigate conflict. The ability to walk away is one of the clearest indicators of emotional intelligence. Not because walking away is easy. It is not. Everything inside you resists it. Your ego resists it. Your pride resists it. That voice in your head that says, they will think you are weak if you leave, that voice is loud and persistent and very convincing. But walking away despite all of that resistance, choosing peace when every part of you wants to choose war, that requires a level of self-mastery that most people never develop. It requires you to override your most basic impulses. It requires you to value your long-term well-being over your short-term desire to be right. It requires you to understand, deeply and without doubt, that your worth is not determined by whether you won an argument at a cafe on a Tuesday evening. There is also something practical about walking away that often gets overlooked. When you remove yourself from a conflict, you deny it the fuel it needs to continue. Arguments are not self-sustaining. They require at least two participants. The moment one person exits, the fire begins to die. Words that were about to be spoken never leave anyone's mouth. Insults that were forming behind someone's teeth never see the light of day. Damage that was about to be done simply is not done. Think about how many relationships could have been saved if one person had walked away before the conversation crossed the line. Think about How many friendships could still be intact if someone had said, "I care about you too much to keep going right now," and simply left the room? Think about how many regrets could have been avoided if the words that were spoken in the heat of the moment had never been spoken at all. Walking away is not just self-preservation. It is an act of preservation for everything around you, your relationships, your reputation, your self-respect, the image that the people who love you hold of who you are. All of these things are protected when you choose to leave a situation before it becomes destructive. Now, I want to address something that might be sitting uncomfortably in the back of your mind. What about situations where walking away feels wrong? What about injustice? What about moments when someone is genuinely hurting you and staying silent feels like accepting it? This is an important distinction, and I do not want to gloss over it. Walking away is not about accepting mistreatment. It is not about tolerating abuse. It is not about letting people cross your boundaries without consequences. There are absolutely moments in life when you need to stand firm, speak clearly, and address a situation head on. But here's the key. Even in those moments, you can choose how you engage. You can address a serious issue with clarity and calm rather than with rage and reactivity. You can set a boundary without setting a fire. You can say this is not acceptable without screaming it. The wisdom of walking away is not about avoiding all confrontation. It is about refusing to engage in confrontation that serves no purpose. And this is where discernment becomes everything. Ask yourself these questions before you decide whether to stay or go. Is this conversation going to lead to resolution, or is it just going to lead to more conflict? Is this person genuinely interested in understanding me, or are they just interested in defeating me? Will staying in this moment make my life better, or will it only make my evening worse? If the answers tell you that staying serves no purpose, then walking away is not cowardice. It is clarity. It is the recognition that your time on this earth is finite, your energy is precious, and some fights are simply not yours to have. There is one more thing I want you to consider about walking away, and it might be the most important part. Every time you walk away from something that does not serve you, you walk toward something that does. The energy you save by not finishing that pointless argument is energy you can invest in your goals. The emotional bandwidth you preserve by not engaging with that toxic person is bandwidth you can give to the people who actually matter to you. The mental clarity you protect by refusing to replay a conflict for the rest of the evening is clarity you can use to think about your future, your dreams, the life you are actively trying to build. Walking away is not subtraction. It is redirection. You are not removing something from your life. You are making room for something better, and over time, as you practice this consistently, something remarkable starts to happen. You begin to carry yourself differently. There is a calmness in your step, a steadiness in your eyes. People notice, not because you announced it, not because you made a show of your restraint, but because genuine self-control radiates outward in ways that words never can. People feel safe around you because they sense that you are not someone who escalates. People respect you because they see that your peace is not fragile. It is chosen. So the next time you find yourself in a situation that is spiraling, the next time an argument starts to generate more heat than light, The next time you feel the pull to stay and fight for a victory that will not matter by tomorrow, remember the man at the cafe. He walked away, and he took his peace with him. The other man stood there with nothing but the echo of his own voice. Which one do you want to be? Chapter 9. Your attention is the most expensive thing you own. I want you to try something right now. Just for a moment, think about the last 24 hours of your life, not the big events, not the meetings or the meals or the commute. Think about the small moments, the ones that slipped by almost unnoticed, the 5 minutes you spent reading a comment that irritated you, the 15 minutes you spent thinking about it afterward, the half hour you spent mentally composing a response you never actually sent, the hour before bed when your mind wandered back to something someone said earlier that day, turning it over and over like a stone in a tumbler, smoothing away your peace one rotation at a time. Now add it all up, not just today, but yesterday, last week, last month. If you could somehow calculate the total number of hours you have spent giving your attention to things that produced absolutely nothing positive in your life, the number would be staggering. Not days, not weeks, months, possibly years. Years of your one and only life spent processing noise that never deserved a single second of your focus. That is not a small thing. That is an enormous thing, and most people never even notice it is happening. Here is why this matters so much. Your attention is not just a mental function. It is the raw material from which your entire life is built. Every skill you have ever developed, you developed because you gave it your attention. Every relationship you have ever deepened, you deepened because you gave it your attention. Every goal you have ever achieved, you achieved because at some point you directed your attention toward it consistently enough and long enough for it to become real. Attention is not like money, where you can always earn more. It is not like time, which at least moves at a predictable pace. Attention is more like sunlight falling on a garden. Wherever it lands, things grow. Point it at your goals, and your goals grow. Point it at your relationships, and your relationships grow. Point it at your skills, and your skills grow. But point it at negativity, and negativity grows. Point it at conflict, and conflict grows. Point it at other people's opinions of you, and your dependence on those opinions grows. The garden does not care what you plant in it. It will grow whatever receives the light. This is why the ability to ignore is so much more than a defensive skill. It is not just about protecting yourself from negativity. It is about redirecting your most valuable resource toward the things that actually deserve it. Every moment you spend not reacting to a provocation is a moment you can invest in something meaningful. Every hour you save by not replaying an argument is an hour you can give to learning, creating, connecting, building. Think about the most productive, most creative, most emotionally grounded people you know or have heard of. What do they all have in common? It is not that they are smarter than everyone else. It is not that they have fewer problems. It is not that nobody ever criticizes them or tries to provoke them. The difference is where their attention lives. While most people scatter their focus across 100 different reactions throughout the day, these individuals keep their attention locked on a small number of things that truly matter to them. They have learned to treat their attention the way a skilled investor treats capital. Every unit of it is allocated with intention. nothing is wasted on investments that offer no return. Let me give you a practical way to think about this. Imagine that every morning you wake up with a wallet containing 100 coins. These coins represent your total attention and emotional energy for the day. You cannot earn more. You cannot borrow from tomorrow. 100 coins is all you get, and once they are spent, they are gone. Now think about how you spend them. Your morning coffee and a few moments of quiet reflection that costs maybe 2 coins and gives you a great return in clarity and calm. An hour of focused work on something important to you, maybe 10 coins, and the return is progress, satisfaction, a sense of purpose. A meaningful conversation with someone you love, 5 coins, and the return is connection, warmth, the feeling of being known. But then your phone buzzes. Someone left a negative comment on something you posted. You read it. 3 coins spent. You start composing a reply in your head. 5 more coins. You actually type the reply, delete it, retype it, debate whether to send it. 10 coins. You hit send. Now you are waiting for their response, checking your phone every few minutes, your stomach slightly tight, your focus fractured. Another 15 coins. Gone. And what was the return on that investment? Nothing. Less than nothing. You actually feel worse than before. By mid-afternoon, you have spent nearly half your daily coins on a single interaction that produced 0 value in your life. The remaining coins are barely enough to get through your responsibilities, let alone pursue anything meaningful. You end the day feeling drained, scattered, and vaguely frustrated, and you might not even remember why. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is how millions of people live every single day. They hemorrhage attention on things that do not matter and then wonder why they have nothing left for the things that do. The practice of ignoring is essentially the practice of keeping your coins in your wallet when the investment is not worth making. It is looking at a situation, evaluating it honestly, and deciding, this does not earn my attention. Not because you are cold, not because you do not care, but because you understand that your attention is finite, and you refuse to spend it on things that offer nothing in return. And here is something fascinating that happens when you start living this way. The things you do give your attention to begin to flourish in ways you did not expect. Your work improves because your focus is undivided. Your relationships deepen because the people who matter to you receive your full presence instead of the distracted leftovers of a mind that spent all morning arguing with a stranger. Your creativity expands because your thoughts are no longer crowded with unresolved conflicts competing for mental bandwidth. You start to feel something that is hard to describe but impossible to miss, a sense of alignment, as if your inner world and your outer world are finally moving in the same direction, not because your circumstances changed, but because you stopped pouring your energy into the cracks and started directing it toward the foundation. There is one more dimension to this that I think is crucial, and it has to do with how other people experience you. When you become someone who guards their attention carefully, people feel it. They may not be able to articulate what is different about you, but they sense a quality that is increasingly rare in our overstimulated, hyper-reactive world. They sense presence. When you are with them, you are fully with them. When you are listening, you are actually listening. When you speak, your words carry weight because they come from a mind that is not scattered across a dozen unresolved emotional dramas. That kind of presence is magnetic. It builds trust, it deepens connection, it makes people feel valued in a way that no amount of busy multitasking ever could. And it all comes from the same source. You learned to stop giving your attention to things that did not deserve it, and as a result, you have more to give to the things that do. So I want to leave you with this one idea before we move into our final chapter. Start thinking of your attention as currency, the most valuable currency you possess, more valuable than money, because money can be replaced, more valuable than time, because time without attention is just hours passing. Your attention is what turns time into experience, effort into progress, relationships into meaning. Guard it fiercely, spend it wisely, and never, ever hand it over to someone who is offering you nothing but noise in return. Final chapter: The Art of Becoming Untouchable. We have traveled a long way together through these chapters. We have talked about reactions and what they cost you. We have talked about the myth of needing everyone's approval. We have explored the power of silence, the importance of guarding your mental energy, and the wisdom of recognizing when someone is just fishing for a reaction. We have discussed why you do not owe the world an explanation for every choice you make, why peace is a choice and not a destination, why walking away is strength and not surrender, and why your attention is the most valuable thing you will ever own. Now, I want to bring all of those ideas together into something that I hope will stay with you long after this video ends. There is a state of being that very few people ever reach, but the ones who do experience life in a fundamentally different way. I call it becoming untouchable, not untouchable in the sense that nothing ever happens to you. Life will always throw things your way. People will still criticize you. Situations will still challenge you. The world will not suddenly become gentle just because you decided to protect your peace. Untouchable means something different. It means reaching a place inside yourself where external events no longer have automatic access to your emotional state, where a harsh word does not instantly become a harsh feeling, where a negative opinion does not automatically become self-doubt, where a conflict does not immediately become chaos inside your mind. It means developing a space, a quiet, internal room where you can observe what is happening around you without being consumed by it. You see the negativity, but you are not drowning in it. You hear the criticism, but it does not echo endlessly through your thoughts. You notice the provocation, but you do not reach for it. You remain where you are, steady and calm, while the storm passes around you. This is not numbness. I want to be very clear about that. Numbness is shutting down. It is disconnecting from life because the pain of engagement feels too great. That is not what I am describing. What I am describing is the opposite. It is full engagement with life from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. You feel everything. You are aware of everything. But you have developed the discipline to choose which feelings get to stay and which ones get shown the door. Think about it like this. Imagine you are standing on a riverbank. The water is moving fast, carrying all kinds of debris, branches, leaves, sometimes large pieces of driftwood that crash against the rocks. If you jump into the river, you get swept along with everything else. You tumble, you struggle, you exhaust yourself trying to stay afloat while being battered by everything the current carries. But if you stay on the bank, you can watch the river without being carried by it. You can see the debris float past without being hit by it. You can appreciate the power of the water without being destroyed by it. You are present. You are aware, but you are not in the current. Mastering the art of ignoring is learning to stay on the bank. It does not happen overnight. Nobody wakes up one morning suddenly immune to negativity. It is a practice, a daily discipline, a muscle that strengthens over time through consistent use. The first time you choose not to react, it feels unnatural. The 10th time, it feels uncomfortable but manageable. The 100th time, it begins to feel like second nature. And somewhere along the way, you cross a threshold that you did not even know existed. You realize that the things that used to consume you no longer even register. The comments that used to keep you awake at night now pass through your awareness like clouds moving across a sky, present for a moment, then gone. And this is where the transformation becomes truly profound. Because when you are no longer spending your energy managing reactions, something extraordinary opens up. Space, mental space, emotional space, creative space, space to think clearly about what you want from your life, space to feel deeply without being overwhelmed, space to connect meaningfully with the people who matter most to you. In that space, you discover things about yourself that were always there but could never be heard above the noise, passions you had forgotten about, ideas that had been waiting patiently for a quiet moment to surface, a sense of direction that had been buried under layers of other people's opinions and expectations. You also discover something about the world that most people never see. The vast majority of situations that feel urgent in the moment are not urgent at all. Most arguments that seem critical dissolve into irrelevance within days. Most criticisms that feel devastating today will not even be remembered next month. The drama that consumes so much of people's lives is almost entirely optional. It only continues because people keep choosing to participate. When you stop participating, the drama stops too. Not gradually, not slowly over time, almost immediately. Because drama, like fire, requires fuel, and your reaction is the fuel. Remove it, and the fire has nothing left to burn. I want to share one final thought with you, and it is something I believe with my entire being. The quality of your life is determined not by what happens to you, but by what you allow to live inside you. Two people can experience the exact same event. One carries it for weeks, turning it over in their mind, letting it poison their mood, their relationships, their sleep. The other acknowledges it, processes it, and releases it. Same event, completely different outcomes. The difference is not circumstance. It is internal discipline. You have that discipline available to you right now, today. Not as something you need to develop from scratch, but as something you can begin practicing in your very next interaction. The next time someone says something designed to provoke you, pause, breathe, feel the pull of your instinct to react, and then make a conscious choice. Ask yourself the question that changes everything. Does this deserve my energy? If it does, respond with clarity and intention. If it does not, and honestly most things do not, let it pass. Keep your coins in your wallet, leave the switch on the wall, stay on the riverbank. Let the debris float by. Because here is the truth that sits at the heart of everything we have discussed. The world will never stop making noise People will never stop having opinions. Criticism will never disappear. Provocation will never cease. These are permanent features of the human experience, and no amount of wishing will change them. But you can change your relationship with all of it. You can decide that your peace is not negotiable. You can decide that your attention belongs to you and you alone. You can decide that the only voice that gets to live rent-free in your mind is your own. And when you make that decision, truly make it, not as a passing thought, but as a fundamental commitment to the way you live. Something shifts beneath the surface of your life. A quietness settles in. Not a quietness of emptiness, but the quietness of clarity. The quietness of a mind that knows what it values and refuses to be distracted from it. That quietness is power. Real power. The kind that does not need to announce itself. The kind that does not need to win arguments to prove it exists. The kind that simply is, steady and unshakable, like the deep river that moves without making a sound. You deserve that power. You have always deserved it. The only thing standing between you and that quiet, unshakable peace has never been the world outside you. It has always been the decision inside you. The decision to stop reacting, stop explaining, stop chasing approval, stop flipping switches, stop feeding fires that were never yours to tend, and simply, powerfully, deliberately, to ignore what does not deserve you. That is the lesson. That is the practice. And that is the freedom that waits on the other side.